Welcome to the Texas Czech Heritage and Cultural Center and to the Sanford Schmidt Amphitheater. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. All right, with further ado, we don't want to go any further along here. We want to start recognizing the High Toppers again. High Toppers started in 1949, went to 1987. Several decades and years. And one of the members that played with the High Toppers Orchestra, Mr. Larry Hogg, is here, and he will be the MC tonight. Larry?
Thank you, Mark. Oh, sorry for the noise. You'd think I'd know by now. Thank you a million for the opportunity to be here and to do this. We are excited. It's fun to see your faces out there. Our job is to let you reminisce of the High Toppers, paying tribute to the High Toppers. Before we even get started, we have two of the original members here that I want immediately to recognize. But they moved on me, musical chairs. Okay, there's Alton Ra down here. Alton, will you please stand up? Alton played tenor sax, trumpet, and many instruments, and was the vocalist for the High Toppers. And we also are very pleased to have Aubrey Constable and his wife. Please stand. Aubrey played lead alto, played saxes and clarinets, and part of the amazing sax section of the High Toppers. The first number we're going to play tonight, in fact, what you see, I want to show you something to give you a little bit of skill level of the High Toppers and why they were called the High Toppers. They started out, four of them got together at their buddy's house in high school just to play. They were all very talented musicians, and they started playing and were invited to play their first, now we call them gigs, but back then they call them dance jobs. And they were invited to play, and one of the dads says, well, I think you should call yourselves the High Toppers. And everybody, why the High Toppers? Well, you're in high school, and you're the top musicians of the high school band, so call yourselves the High Toppers. So they did. That's how it started. Well, why I said that is when you saw the High Toppers, this is what you saw, 7 musicians. Notice there's a couple of holes in the van. Guys, if you'll come now and fill the holes. In order to give you what you heard, we decided to add a couple of spots. Everybody in the High Toppers, in fact, I think you had to play at least 2 instruments to play with the High Toppers or you just weren't allowed. Except the drummer. You know the drummer, they just picked anybody up on the way, to play drums. You're not supposed to argue, Danny. He says he's not going to argue. Anyway, if you went to a High Topper dance, those 7 musicians would hop, skip all night long. They'd play the first part on sax, and then they'd switch off. Altons would switch on and play a trio on the trumpet, and they'd play clarinet, so they were all over. So they gave you the sound of 9 musicians. Well, to make it easier for us, we're just going to start out with the sound of 9 musicians. Now, speaking of starting out, what do you remember, without speaking it out, what do you remember was the first song the High Toppers always played? Well, we went to an expert. You know, many of you know him. I'd be surprised if anybody that doesn't know him. We went to one of the High Toppers expert, Danny's dad, Raymond Zappatal, and says, Raymond, what did they always start with? And he said every time they went to go see the High Toppers, at Lodge 88 in Houston, what a place that is, what it was, and what it still is. He said every time they started out with the Wurstfest Polka. Well, why the Wurstfest Polka? Well, number one, the High Toppers were the first band to play for the Wurstfest when it first started. How many years ago, Scott? 54 years ago. By the way, I brought my brother along. He's the president of the Wurst Association. We're glad to have him with us today. So they started to represent the Wurstfest.
Further back.
But I think you'll also get that feel. High Toppers always wanted to start with a peppy, good, let's get it started polka. So that's what we're going to start out with, is a Wurstfest polka. Let's go. Ready.
This next number we're going to do, it's one called the Rhine Waltz.
Thank you. I've got a confession. We're at the Czech Heritage event, but the High Toppers are what? German. Yeah. Our brother, the Czech bands and the German bands, that's one thing we were smart and did, and blended the music together. I do remember the High Toppers started their protege bands with different bands. In fact, if I were to rename the High Toppers are the best name, no question. But if I were to rename them, I'd rename them the Chameleons, because they could play just about any style that was put in front of them. Six Fat Dutchman, Eddie Janak, later years, Ernie Kuchera. But as they played more, they, like Alton Ron was saying, they'd saturate the area and play a little bit too much, so they had to go move out and play other dances. So they moved out in what they called, instead of the Deutschland, they'd go into Czechland and play. And naturally, the Czech dancers would come and they'd want to hear their Czech music. Well, it didn't take long that my dad, who had arranged for a lot of the music. By the way, my father is Melford Hogg, the late Melford Hogg. He's the big man with a big smile with a big accordion. So that's how I was fortunate. In fact, I finally got a little bit tricky with him. I wanted to play with High Toppers since I couldn't play. And I played trumpet, and I could never sneak in because Reggie Ludwig just kept on playing. He just wouldn't move over and would make room. So I borrowed my brother's drum set and learned how to play, and here's what got it. I was invited to play for a band called the Rhythm Riders, led by Representative Doug Miller. Once my father found out that I was playing Western music, that was it. He didn't want me to be ruined with that Western music. Be kind of like an Aggie going to Boston. So that's how I got started, and how the High Toppers got started in '49. In fact, the NFL has their throwback uniforms. Well, I want to show you the High Toppers throwback stands. You see those stands in front of you? 1949. Thank you, Alton, for making sure that we had the opportunity to have these things. You didn't come to hear me talk. You came to hear some amazing music. Let's go to the next number. It's got another flair. One of the things that the High Toppers were able to do is throw in a little bit of Mexican-style music in there. This next one is called The Skaters. Okay. one is Our Little House Waltz, and it is off of the Selections by Texans album. The next one is going to be, we're going to feature the clarinets, and we are going to wear the clarinets out. It's called the Grasshopper Polka. So let's start out with the Our Little House, and we're going to go immediately into the Grasshopper Polka and get you some more music. Yeah. This one is a favorite. I'm going to mention, this was a favorite of a late band member and one of the managers of the High Toppers for many years, and also the MC for the High Toppers. Renee, I was going to call you by your nickname, but I decided not to. Renee Ludwig, are you here? There she is. Great to see you. Reggie Ludwig. He's got a very long timeline on this. He was a real driver of the High Toppers. This was one of his favorites. I know that because Reggie sat next to me many dance jobs. I told you I couldn't get him off the trumpet, so he sat next to me on drums. So he made it known what his favorites were. And we're going to play this one and another one after this, but right now we're going to play Fly Me to My Homeland. I don't know about you, but that song gives me goosebumps. It still does, listening to it. Laddie Polka. High Toppers in that one, well, we need to start writing some obituaries. Okay, next one is going to be Pat's polka. We'd like to, thank you, Danny. We would like to send this out especially to Pat and Doris. Pat and Doris Mullenauer from New Braunfels. Thank you for being here. Great to have you guys here. They were, man, you could bet on them being at a high topper dance and dancing all night long. That's why they look so young. My goodness. Oh, okay. I didn't know this. They were also reigned king and queen at the polka festival, and it's no surprise that they were. Okay, Pat's polka. Because we wanted to be hot. Well, the High Toppers, those of you remember, were known as probably being, well, they were known as, in a period of time, as the Texas Top Polka Band. They were also known in their period of time as being the best dressed polka band. So, I know that these jackets are honoring Danny. They're at least over, I don't want to say my age.
Alton, how old are they?
Well, let's just say that when I was playing with the High Toppers back in 74, 75, they had just bought these coats. So I'll let you figure out from there. But we wanted to do the best we could to bring forth the High Topper look. We tried really hard. Now, how many of you remember what I call the shimmery coats? It's red one way, blue the other, and gold the other. We tried. They changed colors. You turn one way, and you think they were a psychedelic rock band instead of a polka band.
Those were cool.
They were cool. But they wore out. So we're very fortunate to have these. That's why we wore these again, to commemorate the High Toppers, how they look, and as best we can, how they sound. We're going to take a brief intermission, go get a little bit of drinking water, and we'll be right back to play some more music for you.